Hello and welcome to Sunday Run Day, the podcast. On this week's episode, we're joined on a show by Cam. Cam's going to share an insight into his running journey. We'll also talk about his upcoming challenge, which I'm super excited to hear more about. So first off, Cam, thank you for taking the time out to join the show.
Thanks very much for having me. Yeah,
No,
awesome.
I really do appreciate you taking the time out and to share an insight into your running journey. So I'd love to go back to the start of where you first started getting into your running journey and then obviously getting into the ultra running.
Yeah, it was a quick progression for sure for me. It was a slippery slope, I guess you could call it. So yeah, sort of from when I was about 17 to 20, like Ninja Warrior was kind of the sport, and that's what was taking a lot of my time. I wasn't running at all. Um, and then COVID kind of kicked in, and every comp I was going to at that time was either in America or over East, or so couldn't travel. Um, all the gyms closed. So I was like, I can't really have nothing to train for. I'm sort of very always having, set a goal and go chase it. And so I was like, I didn't like sitting stagnant. So I was like, oh, what can I do? And in that time, sort of a few of the obstacle course races, like it was Red Dust at the time, they reached out and would you like to come test our obstacle? So it was like a 5K sort of obstacle course race and with some obstacles in there. So I'm like, I can't feel kind of comfortable, but hadn't run for years, and then so yeah, did a couple of them and sort of got hooked, and it was still sort of COVID at that time, so was still able to just go out, take the dog, go for a run, or go around the block. So it was just something for me to do and train for, I suppose. But then yeah, my dad ran ultras sort of when I was younger, and I never really got too involved. So I guess that seed was almost already
Yeah.
planted for where I wanted to go with it, because I was like, oh, I'm running. And, I sort of trained for a little bit for those obstacle course races, like those 5Ks, did a couple of like 10K ones. And I'd been running for like maybe a month. And I was, oh, I reckon I could do a half. So I did a couple of half marathons, just not events, just went out and ran one. I was like, oh, how hard can it be? And just always like seeing how far I can push myself, and so did them, and I had zero context of running world. Like it was, I just went out and ran, and looking back, I was like, it's actually a very good run. Like I think like my first half that I ever did was like a 1:35.
Wow.
Um, so it was like, but I was like, oh, I think even I put a post up and I was like, oh, it's not fast, but it'll get quicker sort of thing. Like I just wanted to like push something. But now looking back, I was like, oh, it's actually, that's a fairly good nudge for your
Yeah.
first. So then, yeah, that was really February of 21, sort of did a couple of halves and I was like, oh, okay, I'll see how it go. And I met some people through obstacle course racing that were coaches. So I was like, a bit of structure and guidance for my next step would be ideal. But I think they even got a bit of a shock for what I was going to tell them. So I pretty much said, so this was by like March. I told them, yep, we'll give us some coaching and some structure. And I was like, I want to run the 75K that my dad ran. So he ran that in 2012, I believe it was. Could have even been earlier. No, it would have been earlier, maybe 2010.
Okay.
And I was like, it's in 6 weeks. Get me ready for it. And they were like, well, all right, let's just see how we go. So, yeah, they did up a bit of a plan, and yeah, they were a bit shocked by the whole thing. But no, I got there and managed to do a fairly good race. And it was cool to have like dad crewing me there, because like we never ran together. When he was sort of mainly running, it was all just like dad would run and I'd join him here and there. But no, it was very cool to do that race with dad there.
Yeah.
I think was a cool thing. So I think in the future it'd be trying to get us to do a race together would be really cool. Like he hasn't done 100K yet. So I think that's next on the list for us to do together. But anyway, so yeah, did the 75. I felt fairly well. I think I don't know. I can't remember my time. But it was for the time frame that I trained for it. I was happy. Like it was a good race. Like I think I never started running to chase a time. Like ultras were sort of that path of like you didn't really care of your if you beat like your podium or your time as much. Like it's just like I wanted to finish for me, and I quite enjoyed that feeling of doing the longer stuff rather than racing a 5K or a 10K. And you're like, oh, can I beat this guy? And you're so worried about time. And but here you just eat lollies and just keep moving and have a laugh. Like I think I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, that sort of stemmed into 4 months later, I think it was. I ran my first 100 miler.
Wow.
Um, so it kind of just went like my longest run before the 75 was 30, and then did the 75, and I was like, you can never do less than what you did before. So then I was like, 100 miler, we're just gonna go for it. And yeah, just went for it. That was so I did the 75 in May, and yeah, I think it was 4 or 5 months later was Feral, so did my first miler. And yeah, and I finished it. That was a good race. I just jumped on a train with some boys and that I met on the trail, and they sort of were, you know, very experienced ultra, in their 50s. Big Kev and Andy Thompson were their names. Like it was just jumped on with them and just 28 hours in the bush, just
Love it.
chasing people, and they're like, veterans of the sport. Like, I think Big Kev by that point in November had done 200 milers, 300 milers, like marathon builds in there. Like it was cool to just, see those guys and go, this is what, is coming in the sport. Or, so yeah, that was really cool. And then, what did I do next? I think backyard ultras were the sort of thing coming through by then. So that next March, I jumped on a backyard and did one of them, and I really didn't enjoy it. I think doing loops for anyone with an active mind, and I think the loops is one thing, but then having to stop and start was definitely a killer. Like, I think in those longer races or, any other race, you can sort of just get in your zone, put your blinders on, put your head down and just sort of one foot in front of the other. But with them, it's, if you do your lap in 40 minutes, you're waiting until, that next hour. And it's like, you just got to go in, and then you're worried about food and sleep and all this other stuff. Whereas in a point to point, like the miler, it was like, I just looked at my watch, I was like, oh, 20 Ks till the next day. Just put your head down and keep sort of stepping till you get there. So it was definitely a big transition. But I guess that's where the downward spiral sort of started as well, was Herdies. So injuries were coming. I think my progression was so fast that it was, looking back now, it was definitely a recipe for disaster. Well, not disaster, but something was going to give out. It was just what was it going to be? So I ended up, my ITB ended up locking up during Herdies. So I think I got 22 laps was where I pulled the pin.
Very impressive.
Which was 130K, 140, something like that. And yeah, so I was like, nah, I'll just, I'll stop here. Like, got nothing sort of to prove. I'll just get this leg sorted and come back and figure it out. And that next few months were just like any runner would relate or know, like it's just an ongoing niggle. Like it's not debilitating, but it's enough to just be annoying.
Sure.
And it was just a frustrating thing. And I'd already signed up to the 100 miler that I'd done the year before that year. So I was like, I'll just try and get some sort of build into that, and I'll start that, and we'll just see how we go. And then, yeah, so that happened. I went to the start line. It was nowhere near a build. Like, I just sort of couldn't string too much together. But I was like, well, I've signed up, and running races nowadays are getting fairly expensive. So it's like you don't really want to pull without having to, you know? Like it was, I was like, I'll just go to the start. Like, surely I'll figure it out. And then, that was not good. So I did Feral again, which it's a midnight start for anyone that doesn't know the race, and you just get dropped. out in the middle of the bush by a bus and you run back to Perth. So it's a brutal race.
Sure.
And I think it's 4,500 meters vert. So it's it's nothing to overlook. But I think like when you finish something before, you do kind of overlook that whole thing of like, I've done it before, so a year later I should be better, right? But started that race and I got like 20K in, and I was like, this is not good. Like, there's something going on and I don't know what it is, but I know my body fairly well now to be like, this is not ideal. But I was like, it's also 2:00 in the morning in the middle of nowhere. Like, no one's here to bail you out. So I ended up I got to the 70K aid and I had a crew there. Like my mum was there and some friends and whatever. And I saw them and I had a bit of a tanty, at my leg. I just said, used 2 rolls of tape. I don't care. Just tape it up. We'll figure it out. Had a bit of food and so we'll reset. And I had a pacer for me for the next 50K. So I was like, let's just, see if that sort of brings the morale up. I'll pop a few Panadol, whatever, and just see how it goes. And then ended up going. It was agony. I think that next 50K took me like 10 hours. It was ridiculous. And I was like, nah, I think something's really wrong here. And then, mum's seen me in a fair few states by then. Dad was there and, dad had sort of seen my pain tolerance and knew when it was sort of a bit more serious, I suppose. So I got to the 130K. And the finish of the race, they call it the death loop. So it's like you go up, it's pretty much a big hill up to the town of Kalamunda, and then you turn around and come back to where you've already come through, back to Mundaring as the finish. So that's what I had left. And I was like, I've been like in agony for about 18 hours. I was like, this is, and at that point, I think like most runners that have had injuries or, have gone to push through something, it's you want to try and avoid long-term stuff. Like, you're like, maybe I can pull here. Like, I was trying to be, I guess, mature in a way of like, if I stop here, maybe I'll, miss the long-term being out or anything. So I was like, I'll just, I've shown what I can do. Like, it's sort of like, let's just pull here. I'll get my legs scanned. We'll figure it out. So ended up pulling, went for a scan. They're like, yep, all right, I had every scan under the sun, MRIs and X-rays and bone scans and this, that, or whatever. But they said you had a stress fracture. And I was like, what do you mean had? Like, is it healed? They're like, no, like because you've kept running on it, you've turned it into pretty much a regular fracture in your tibia, which is, just below my knee. So like you're pretty much like, in a very vague term, like running on a broken leg. And I was like, in a way, I was kind of relieved that it was something, like you could have got every scan and went, there's nothing there, like, oh, maybe try and do some rehab, or there was nothing to pinpoint it. But then I was like, well, all right, it was something fairly serious, because I was pretty hard on myself for not finishing as well, like it was. And then I was there, I was like, well, I've walked that many K, why didn't I do the last 30? So it was, all those games you play in your head of what if or why didn't I, or, but no, so it was not nice, but it was good to have something to like, that's what it was. And then, that was sort of me out for a little bit, just trying to get that back to healed. And then, so just rehab that. And then that's where I sort of fell in love with the bikes, because the sports doctors were like, oh, you can jump on a bike, do all that. I sort of took that with a grain of salt as well, because I'm fairly sure he meant like stationary or road bike. But my best mate rode downhill mountain bike. So he's like, come do that with me. And I was like, yes, sweet. So, went into that. So I didn't it was a bit of a grey area, almost a loophole, if you could call it. Um, like I was on a bike, but I don't think it was the bike that he had
Yeah,
told
they
told
specifically
me. But
had
I didn't
advice.
ask because I was like, well, if you said a bike, it's got two wheels, so. Um, but yeah, so injuries were no fun, but I'm glad, like, same thing with, you know, COVID happening and NIMS shutting down. It was nice to have the bike of like something new,
Yeah.
something to sort of work towards. It was still keeping that, fitness up that I'd sort of built over the last few years. And then pretty much came back and sort of got a decent sort of little build under me back into running because I don't know, I think like having it's one thing and then, the thought of it being there, especially the injury, you're like, is it there? Or then in your head, you're like, oh, is it kind of sore? I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Or so it was like that build back. I was like, I'm not going to set anything because it's very much like I think most people, it's like, you know, I said to my feet, I was like, do not tell me that I can run a little bit or like, don't tell me I can run until I can run.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to go out and tell me to run for, you know, a 10-minute walk, 5-minute run, 10-minute walk, that just sounds like a 25-minute run to me. So I'm like, unless you're confident in telling
Yeah.
me that I'm good to run, I don't want to hear it. Like, I'd rather not run for a bit and just sort of keep the bike up.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, than to, rush into it and do all that. So, but yeah, anyway, did a decent build. And then that's when the Nedds Uncomfortable challenges started. So he was doing it for the first year and I was kind of like, what can I do? So then, yeah, that's when I picked the 50K a day for 10 days. And that was cool. That was a good little, not a little, it was, it was a good way of getting back into like a challenge as such that
Yeah.
wasn't a race or, wasn't me putting a heap of pressure on myself. It was literally just a let's finish it. Um, and yeah, like I still worked full time while I did that
I
challenge.
think what I
Um,
crazy was that you're doing that challenge, you say working full time, but you're waking up at like, 2:30 in the morning and running at 3 a.m., doing 50K and then working full time. I thought that was just incredible. And it's say like doing the Ned's Uncomfortable challenge as well, raising so much funds as well. Like you raised over $6,000, is absolutely incredible. And it's like 50 kilometers a day for 10 days. Not such a small challenge, but I guess in the grand scheme of where you were coming from and obviously getting that recovery again, it's just amazing. But how was that? Obviously, 3 a.m. in the morning, waking up and then going out there for a run doing 50K.
yeah, it was, I definitely in a way underestimated it
Yeah.
a little bit, I think. I think I looked at it as 50 and I was like, oh, 50's manageable. Like I've done bigger before, but doing it consecutively for 10 days was the killer because, like you said, recovery, you got to be on top of your nutrition, which has never been, at that time, it definitely wasn't a strength of
Yeah.
mine. Um, and I think, yeah, like getting up at 2:30. So, like weekdays, I'd have to split it. So I was running by 3. And then I would just get as much done as I could before work. So it'd be like 30, 25, 30K. And then after work, I'd come back, put the shoes back on, go out and finish the rest. And I think people looked at it. I had a few like sort of people go, "Oh, you split it, so that must have been a little bit easier." And I was like, "Nah, not a chance." Like,
That's no recovery
up at two.
time in there as well. Like you're running twice a day and doing big kilometers, 30, then 20, or 25, whatever it might be to break down. You got no recovery. So I think it's a big challenge as well. As you say, doing 50K a day, just out 50K is a challenge for sure, but you get that recovery for afterwards and then go back again, kind of, not 24 hours, but let's say, 20 hours or 18 hours recovery, but then you're going back out and then you're doing after doing 30K working all day, then doing another 20K. I mean, that's a real challenge by itself.
Yeah, and it was, I think I would do that, wake up early, try and get some breakfast in, go to work, come back, put shoes on, run. I'd then, have a shower, dinner, back in bed for the next day. Whereas like weekend days, I was like, I'm in the routine. I'll start running at 3.
Yeah.
So then I got up, would run at 3, but the whole thing was done by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then you had that whole time of that day till the next day to recover. So I felt so much better doing the whole lot. But no, that was a really good introduction but it was like, it was cool to get back doing something. That was the first sort of big thing since my leg. So that was kind of like a bit of a, put a bit of confidence back in me of like, yep, all right, we're rolling now. Like this is sort of healed, and I was able to trust it again. And then, that sort of led into, like, I was coming into a really good build again. Like, I was like, let's keep the ball rolling. From that, like, I wasn't injured. I pulled up really well. Like, I was like, yep, sweet, we're on. So sort of got a new coach and spent a bit of time over in NZ, did some races over in New Zealand. And, that was really cool. That's my favourite place in the world for biking and running and pies and chalky milk. Like it was, it was just a recipe for having the best time.
Yeah.
And then, so had a really good build under me, had a few sort of really big plans. And then I ended up getting invited to go over to France for Ninja Warrior and compete in that.
Oh, amazing.
Which I'd stopped pretty much my whole running. I'd stopped Ninja. Like it was, running took that thing. And then, 3 years since that sort of got rebirthed, and I was like, yeah, cool. Like I'll go over. Like I haven't trained for it. I had a week and a half notice and went over. But unfortunately I had a slip up and I pretty much, tore all the ligaments off my bone in my ankle. Which, was definitely a bummer.
Yeah.
Because, I just sort of got to a point of, coming off the leg and sort of had some confidence again of, yep, we're rolling.
Yeah, feeling good.
And then for something that wasn't on my goal list to sort of take the running away, I was like, why couldn't it be a finger or, a hand where I could, still run?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
why does it have to be like a pretty important part of running?
Yeah.
So that was building again. And I think, injuries suck. And, like every runner would relate to, like that has been injured like properly, or, not been able to set a goal and then not been able to do it due to injury, or, stuff like that. It's bitter, but I think they do also teach you a lot. Like I think in the running world, like that stress fracture or my ankle or all the little injuries that I've had, like people could warn you about. Like I can sit here and say to people, if you do this, you'll end up with that, or, whatever. But I think unless you just have them yourself and got to work through them, I think that teaches you more than people telling you will ever teach you. So I am grateful for them in a way, because it makes you a bit smarter. And yes, I need to now do my strength training because otherwise it ends up doing that. So anyway, got the ankle healed. I sort of sped the process up a lot. I was just, all that focus of running and training just went into rehab of just like, let's get this ankle back going. And then, so I sort of sped that up. They said I wouldn't be running till November. I started running. So I did my ankle in April. They were like, November, we reckon you'll be right to run again. And I ended up running by the start of July.
Wow, that's incredible.
So just sort of like pushed it pretty hard, and had a real good physio in my corner, like Scott. He was amazing, and just went, let's just see how we go and how quick we can get it back. And was able to do that. So I was like, trying to set that next challenge again of something to chase. And Ned's challenge was happening again that year. And a lot of injury, well, rehabbing an injury is swimming or riding a bike or doing all that stuff. So I was like, what can we do? And then, that's when the half Ironman a day sort of came in, because, I could probably have a fairly decent level of running by then.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I wouldn't be able to top 50 Ks a day. And it didn't really sit right to do less than what I'd previously done. Like, I don't think as much as what's happened, you never want to sort of go backwards with it. So I thought, was thinking. I was like, well, they're talking about swimming and bike, and I was like, why don't I just? We called it the Iron Boys. So yeah, doing a half Ironman every day for 10 days.
Okay, well,
And yeah, that was definitely an eye opener. I think. Like I think a lot of people thought because I spent a lot of time on a bike and I run a bit like I was run fit, like I was fairly I built up fairly good by then. It wasn't like a ankles healed go. So that June I started running. October was end of October was the challenge. So I sort of had a fair bit of time there. Um, but swimming, I was like, this is well out of my repertoire of things. I'd never swum more than a kilometre, and I didn't train at all for the swimming.
wow.
Sort of just went, I'll figure it out when I get there, and I'm fairly good at backing myself in to sort of figure it out. Um, and yeah, luckily I didn't drown. Like I guess it was a thin line to play with. But yeah, it was that was really cool. But definitely same sort of thing. It was I actually took the time off work for that one, which I'm very glad I did.
Yeah, for sure. That opportunity, especially doing that, as you say, it's not just a run as well. You're going out there doing half marathon every day, but yeah, backing up with time on the bike, time in the pool, and yeah, to give yourself that chance to recover as well. Over those 10 days, it's a massive challenge you put yourself in. But that's amazing that you were able to go out there. And you say back it up from doing, Ned's Uncomfortable Challenge the year before or something absolutely amazing. And then to back it up with something just incredible. I love the fact you call it the Iron Boy. I think it's quite funny. Like obviously it was a great little take on it. And yeah, and I'm obviously congratulations to you to do that. It's a massive achievement again. And then I'd love to talk a little bit before we obviously wrap up so much of the podcast about your next challenge because it really actually engaged me so much, hearing about it. So in May, on the 20th of May, you're going to run from Geraldton to Perth over 4 days. Now, I want to let you talk a little bit about it and the reason why you're doing from Geraldton to Perth and the kilometers that's actually taken on. I think it's such an amazing challenge and such, something really personal to yourself as well. And yeah, I for one can't wait to see you do it, but obviously you hear more about it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was definitely a brainstorm idea I've sort of had in my head for a little while. Both my grandparents suffer with dementia. So that anyone that's sort of seen or had loved ones sort of decline with the disease sort of knows how hard it is and how difficult it is to sort of see that happen, especially, like I was lucky enough to have my grandparents, there for my whole childhood, and they sort of only started declining now as I'm older. But yeah, so wanted to do something for raising funds for Dementia Australia, and do something while my grandparents are still here. I think was something close to my heart. So that's where I sort of went, what can I do? And I sort of had a look at, just did a Google search. I was like, how many people in Australia are affected by dementia? And it's 446,000 people were affected by dementia in Australia, which is actually a mind blowing number. You know, I've got two of them as my grandparents, but to think that that many other people, one, have the disease or have a loved one with the disease is pretty wild. So I was like, how can I tie something in? And I was like, 446 kilometers. So then I sort of just started brainstorming, ideas on how this is going to work and what I'm going to do. And I literally, if I'm completely honest with you, I chat GPT'd it. I went, I want to run 446 kilometers. What are some of your ideas on how to do
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Um, or like, towns to start from, or because initially I did sort of think about the idea of an athletics track,
Okay.
and just do it nonstop, but logistics of that can just be difficult sometimes, of renting a track and the whole lot. So yeah, we ended up on a Gero run. So yeah, we'll be running from Geraldton to Perth, and then yeah, finish on my birthday ideally. And yeah, just have, I don't know, I just think having my grandparents there, that's sort of the fuel in my mind of like, you know, finishing that with them there. It's a birthday, so it's kind of like that's when I'd see them, and I think that's just really really special. And if it means I can raise some funds and awareness for Dementia Australia, that's what I'll do. So, no, really excited to one, announce it. I only announced it this week, so that's been really cool. And so the plan is 4 days.
That's incredible. And I just love what you've sort of put together there. As you say, wanted to do something, having your grandparents here and suffering with dementia and disease. As you say, to see the decline is very difficult, very challenging for everyone that's dealing with that. Not only, people that are dealing with the disease, but also the loved ones as well, having trying to help them along there. And for what you're doing there, trying to raise awareness is absolutely amazing. And I love what you've done is, the 446 kilometers for the 446,000 people. Like, that's amazing. And I think it's got such a great meaning to it. And then, as you say, to do it over 4 days is obviously massive. You're doing over, sort of 140 kilometers a day pretty much. And, or 110 kilometers a day. And it's absolutely massive. But also to have that, to finish on your birthday, to be surrounded by your grandparents and your family is absolutely amazing. I love the challenge, and I love that you say you announced it this week. For anyone listening, check it out. If you can contribute, please go and check out Cam's, Instagram and jump on there and donate if you can. It's an amazing cause, an amazing challenge. I can't wait to hear more about it. So how's the training been leading up to it? Before we obviously wrap up the podcast, how's the training going? How's the body feeling? Let's say you've been dealing with these, the injuries over the last couple of years. You got yourself obviously doing Nedds Uncomfortable challenge towards the end of last year. How's the body currently feeling and ready for it?
Yeah, like training's been really good actually, touch wood. Like I think, I sort of went to a point I'm like, if anything flares up, I've probably had it before. So I'm pretty good at sort of getting on top of it before it becomes a real problem. Got really good physios and people in my corner, which is cool. So now just building, and I think, risk assessment as well. Before I'd be a bit more blasé with, what I'd go and do and stuff like that. But now I'm a bit more selective of like, what's the risk there? Is it going to sort of derail anything? And I'm sort of just locked in now. Like Ks are going up and sort of heading up towards the 150, 160K weeks. So, but no, body feels great. It's actually probably the best pace form I've been in ever, which is hard because it's like me running at pace at the moment isn't going to help me for this next thing. So it's sort of just trying to hide a bull behind a gate kind of thing. But no, it feel really good, and just hope I can sort of roll into this with a good build. And like the plan is for the run. This is plan A. It may change when I get there, but plan A is going to be 130K a day for the first 3 days.
Okay.
And then that'll leave me with about 56 Ks for the last day. I thought, if anything goes, there's a lot of time for something to go wrong in 110. So I thought if I can try and smash out as much as I can in the 3 days, and then for that last day, which is my birthday, I can sort of, should be done by about lunchtime, be able to have the fam around and, do that. Because if I finish at 9 o'clock at night, I can guarantee my grandparents are not awake. I'm rarely awake past 8 o'clock as I am. So, excited and, feel really good.
No, it's a great plan as well. I love that as well, as you say, kind of, banking those kilometers because, you say you don't know how things are going to go, how your body's going to feel. And you can get there to give you that opportunity on that last day to really enjoy that run, finish it at a great time, have people around you. It's such a great idea. No, I'm really excited for it. I can't wait to hear more about it. And I love the insight today. I really thank you for joining the show and sharing such an amazing insight. Like the topics you covered there, talking about your injuries and how you overcome that. I think, a lot of listeners and myself as well, having those injuries and learning so much and going back from when you first started running on your half marathons and learning about fueling and strategy. It's just been amazing to hear your journey of where you've come from and where you're heading. And obviously I'm super excited for what's next on the horizon, following the challenge as well. But just for now, I'm just excited to hear this challenge. And I say, we'll be following it closely. We'll be reaching out and, wanted to touch base with you as well to see how you're getting on. And I can't wait to hear more about it. And I really do thank you for joining the show. It's been a great insight.
No, awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Clint. Appreciate it.
Awesome. That's it for this week. And as always, until next time, happy running.